Hey gang, it's your boy Platt, and today we try a beer that's bananas. That's next to Platt's Beer of the Week. So the particular beer we have today comes to us from the fine folks at Eagle Brewing. It is their banana bread beer. I talked about this beer on the channel, probably 6-7 years ago, even before I started doing the beer series. And at the time it was known as Wells Banana Bread. Again, since the time it's changed name, so I thought we'd do a full review of the beer. A little background into the beer. Eagle Brewing itself has been around since 1976. It was founded in Bedford, England. Where the brewery is today was the site of the old Bedford Eagles football team, soccer team also. Apparently that was where their old stadium was. A lot of history there. Kind of a cool story. The brewery itself was part of the Charles Wells estate. Thus we had Wells Banana Bread at the time. A little more on Eagle Brewing. Eagle Brewing, besides producing their line of beers, the Eagle line of beers, they were also a contract brewer. Some of you may not know what a contract brewer is. Basically, you're producing other people's beers. This happens sometimes. Let's say you're a famous athlete and you want your own brand of beer, but you're not going to start a brewery. You don't want to go through that. You would contract someone else. Or like the early days of Sam Adams, when you couldn't keep up with capacity, you will contract out someone else. So that's what Eagle Brewery was doing besides their own brand of beers. They eventually sold the company in 2017 along with their pub chains. Remember, the breweries over in England get to also own pubs, to a company called Marston's. Now, Marston's dates all the way back to 1875 when it was known as Banks and Company, based in Wolverhampton. They kind of kept going up until 1890 when they were renamed to Wolverhampton and Dudley Brewing, or WNDB. Over the next 60 years, they kind of kept chugging along until 1947 when they went public. Several of the brewing and pub chains in England are public. Kind of a cool, I guess you can own a piece of the brewery or the pub down the road. Unlike here where, again, the breweries and the pubs are kind of kept separate. In 1999, the company purchased Marston's, Thompson, and Evershed. 8 years later, oddly enough, even though they bought Marston's, they changed the parent company's names to Marston's PLC. You don't see that the company that gets bought ends up becoming the name of the bigger entity. Finally, in 2020, Marston's merged with Carlsberg to form Carlsberg Marston's UK. Basically, they're the UK arm of the big Carlsberg global brewing behemoth. And I think we talked about in the Carlsberg video how Heineken and Carlsberg kind of went in and picked pieces off of different breweries that the regulators wouldn't let them come in and buy whole breweries. So, all right, Heineken, you get this part. Carlsberg, you get this part. And Carlsberg has a massive presence in the UK beer market. Real quick, let's talk about some of the other Eagle beers. Because they are part of a big corporate portfolio, they don't have a wide range of beers. They're part of a wide range of beers. Besides the banana bread, they only produce 3 other beers. First is a beer known as Waggle Dance, 5% ABV. This is a honey beer. The term waggle dance refers to a dance that bees do to let other bees know, hey, I found pollen. Thought that was kind of a cool story. Next beer is called Sticky Toffee Pudding, 5% ABV. This is a beer based off the classic English toffee pudding. I find this interesting. There's a lot of flavors out between beers and spirits out there. There's tons of flavors out there, but you don't see a lot of toffee. You don't see a lot of pudding, and definitely you don't see a lot of toffee pudding out there. So this sounds very interesting and very British. Lastly is Eagle IPA, 3.6% ABV. That's kind of low for an IPA. Now, I do know the classic English style IPAs tend to be a little lower ABV than what we have here in the U.S. We're not afraid to bump up ABV over here, but 3.6 does seem a little low. What really caught my eye about this was some of the marketing on this. They claim to have something called a red tractor that is, and this is their terminology, 100% farm assured barley. They're assuring me the barley comes from the farm, which makes me think, so you're telling me there's barley not from a farm? Why are you assuring me of that? But anyway, that's supposedly part of the marketing. If you happen to be from that part of the world or know what that terms mean, please leave in the comments section, because I find that interesting. Well, before we try this particular beer, though, let's check out the stats. So before we try this beer, I thought we'd talk about a little bit about fruit and beer. There's tons of fruit beers out there. There's so many different styles of beers, so many different type of fruit. Beer, of course, pairs well with all kinds of food, so it's just natural that beer and fruit work together. And there's tons of different ways this happens. Think of like a shandy or a rattler. You have a completed beer that's been brewed, fermented, bottled, kegged, and then at presentation we add either lemon juice, grapefruit juice, something like that. That's one of the ways fruit and beer work together. You have sour beers, which don't technically always have to have fruit in there, but again, with that sourness, fruit either complement or contrast, or sweet fruits or sour fruits or whatever, and just that flavor profile really tends to work with the addition of fruit. Wheat beers are interesting because you can attack it a bunch of different ways. Think about like a beer like 21st Amendment, the watermelon wheat we tried. That's adding the fruit in the brewing process. Then there's things like a Blue Moon, which are adding fruit as like a garnish, but it also complements the flavor. Every time I pour at a bar, pour a Blue Moon orange slice, or some beers it's a lot of Hefeweizen, this a lemon slice. Same with Mexican lagers. The lime has almost become standard, and some beers now are just going ahead and adding the lime juice in the Mexican lagers. There's just a ton of different ways to add fruit. One of the big ways too, I want to kind of let the consumer know, having worked a little bit in a craft brewery out here before, purees are a big player, and it kind of makes sense. It's not so much just economics, it's kind of logistics. Nowadays with supply chain issues, kind of don't know when you can get a whole lot of fruit. Also too, think if you're brewing a 10 or 15 barrel mango something, that's a lot of mangoes to cut up, or when you're just not throwing whole mangoes in there, so you got to prep the stuff. That's a lot of work. Purees kind of make it a little simpler. Lastly, I want to talk, there's 3 breweries that are doing some unique things with their beers, and I want to talk about it real quick. Angel City Brewing is doing a beer known as Pinot Fresa. It is aged in Pinot Noir barrels, which is a very fruit-forward red wine, but they're also adding strawberries. And you'll see in a lot of Pinot Noir tasting notes that berries are a big player in that. So very complementary flavors, might contrast with the wood tannins. Just sounds like a very interesting concept for a beer. Next we have from New Glarus something called Serendipity. In this beer they add cherries, apples, and cranberries. Now I've seen cherries, I've seen apple beers. Cranberries you don't see a lot of, and the 3 together just kind of harken you to almost like a Norman Rockwell photo of the fall, cranberries and apples and cherries, kids bobbing for apples and stuff. Sounds like a very interesting combination of fruits. And lastly, from the fine folks down in Shiner, Texas, Shiner brings us their Prickly Pear. It's an amber lager with prickly pear added. Prickly pears really come on even in the spirits world. The last few years, this is a seasonal beer they do that supposedly has really caught on. And again, prickly pear is kind of a very unique fruit, and it's kind of cool to see that they've made a cool beer out of that. Well, enough of that. Let's drink a banana. Nice copper color to it, plenty of bubbles. We got a nice finger width A very light khaki. It's not pure white. It's kind of a light khaki head. Not a lot of bananas on the nose. It's very faint. I'm getting plenty of maltiness though. Like this smells like it might be a nice malty beer. Let's give her a try. There comes the banana. Takes a minute. Actually, I just get a little banana on what seems like a nice little malty beer. It's not big body water, but it's kind of a nice little malty body to it. Yeah, that banana's faint. I do pick up something though on the palate. You know, bananas, if you eat a banana or whatever, you can kind of like an oily kind of texture to it, and I get just a little bit of that on the finish. Like my lips, almost feel like a slight coating. So you kind of get that off the banana, but there's not a ton of banana in there. I mean, it does, if you think about it on a certain level, yeah, I can get banana bread, but not real present. But the beer itself's a nice little malty, you know, very drinkable beer. Just not a ton of banana. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers that you'd like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.